The only aspect of the population problem that cannot be solved through legislation is that of genetics, or more precisely, of genetic quality. Limiting the quantity of human life to improve the quality can be done through legislation. Slowing down population growth across societies can be done through legislation. And stabilizing and then reducing the total population to a sustainable level can also be done through legislation. Legislation, however, cannot improve the genetic makeup of the species. It cannot do it because aiding and accelerating the process of evolution requires selection, be it natural or social, and selection is antithetical to the rule of law, which must apply equally to all. The rule of law is blind. It is inclusionary. Natural selection is anything but blind. It is by necessity exclusionary. To improve the genetic and intellectual endowment of mankind, you have to first prevent its decay, its degeneration, and you have to secondly promote its regeneration and evolution. As a society, you have to prevent those with bad genes from breeding, or convince them to breed less, and encourage those with good genes and enable them to breed more, so that over time and with every generation, the genetic pool is improved. In a society where everyone can procreate, and where the authorities can no longer practice selection by social exclusion or involuntary and covert sterilization, the genetic and intellectual endowment of the species will gradually decay. It will decay through marriage between blood relations, which in some countries constitute half of all marriages. It will decay through environmental degradation, which already affects us all. And it will decay through chemically altered and substandard food and water that will only worsen as overpopulation puts increasingly more pressure on agriculture's ability to feed us and on the planet's life support systems. Throughout history, every society, by the agency of organized religion and political authority, and under the cover of cultural norms and social rules, has devised its own methods to aid natural selection. Islam condemned unattractive women to second or third wife status, to be deprived of children and serve basically as household maids. Christianity created monasticism to seclude the physically or emotionally undesirable women from the world, and in this fashion deprive them of the right to bear children. And Hinduism made the marriage of women contingent on a costly dowry, so as to make the marriage of physically unattractive women impossible and to give preference to the physically attractive. And men have been weeded out across cultures through war and hard or forced labor. And in our days, the entire world, by the agency of government and the United Nations, and under the cover of medicine and public health, aids natural selection by subjecting the poor and the uneducated to covert chemical and biological methods of depopulation that are far more intense than those employed out on the middle class and on the rich. Deprived of the ability to single out individuals, religious and political leaders have settled for the only remaining way to practice selection, namely by singling out entire social classes, which is of course a very poor way of aiding natural selection. So what is to be done? How can we prevent the genetic degeneration of the species and accelerate its evolution in a humane, fair, and intelligent way now that the authorities can no longer practice social exclusion, and we're also forcing them to abandon covert chemical and biological sterilization through the basic elements of life. We have two options, and we must use both. First, we must encourage those with poor genetics to limit themselves to just one child, and provide financial incentives and social rewards to this end. That way, everyone will know the joy of holding and loving and raising a child, and no one will be deprived of the right to propagate his or her genes. And secondly, we must wield the tools of genetic engineering to edit undesirable genes from the genetic makeup of individuals shortchanged by nature or damaged by man. That way, we will improve our genetic and intellectual endowment from generation to generation. We are now in a position where we can understand that our individual actions have bearings on society at large, and we have also gained the knowledge and the technological know-how to begin to craft ourselves through genetics, or at the very least, soften the imperfections of nature. God knows what failures and tragedies await us along this new and unknown road we are about to take. But take it we must, because we cannot return to the cruelties of the past to round up those who have been shortchanged by nature or damaged by man. We will play God, but we will fail or triumph as men.